Catherine, a beautiful and lively young woman, was once full of dreams and ambition, but her life took a dark turn when she lost her sight in a tragic accident. The accident robbed her of not only her vision but also her confidence in life. Now, she spends her days in quiet solitude, working at a call center from her small apartment. Despite her inner strength, Catherine often feels the weight of isolation, longing for the freedom she once had. She maintains a positive outlook, but deep inside, she knows her world has become limited. On one particular afternoon, after finishing her shift, Catherine decides to take a walk to the nearby park. She loves the feeling of the fresh air on her skin and the sounds of life bustling around her. While walking, she stumbles slightly on a cracked sidewalk, causing her to lose her balance. Before she can fall, a pair of strong hands catches her. Windel, a quiet man with a brooding past, holds her steady. He is a former kickboxer who left the sport due to a series of events that shattered his spirit. Windel had once been at the top of his game, with a promising career, but his involvement with a corrupt fight promoter led to disastrous consequences. He abandoned the sport, carrying the weight of his regrets, and now works odd jobs to stay out of trouble. He lives with the guilt of his past, believing he's unworthy of redemption. As Windel helps Catherine regain her footing, she thanks him with a smile that, despite her blindness, lights up her face. For Windel, the brief encounter feels like a moment of clarity in his dark, chaotic life. Intrigued by her warmth and resilience, he helps her to a nearby bench, and they strike up a conversation. Catherine's openness and positivity draw Windel in, and before long, the two realize they've been talking for hours. Unbeknownst to Catherine, Windel is battling his own demons, and though he is captivated by her spirit, he feels an overwhelming sense of guilt, because indirectly, he was involved in the crime that led to the accident that took her sight. But for now, he keeps this secret buried, ashamed of his past and afraid of losing the only light he has found in years. Over the next few weeks, Catherine and Windel continue to meet at the park. Their friendship blossoms naturally, with Catherine sharing stories of her life before the accident. She talks about how she loved to travel and how she once dreamed of becoming a professional photographer. Windel listens intently, absorbing her every word, as if through her, he can experience the life he feels he no longer deserves. Catherine is curious about Windel's life, but he remains tight-lipped about his past, deflecting her questions with vague answers. Despite his guarded nature, Windel finds himself increasingly drawn to Catherine's strength and optimism. Her blindness, rather than making her vulnerable, seems to have made her more resilient. She navigates her world with remarkable independence, refusing to let her disability define her. As they grow closer, Catherine begins to rely on Windel's presence, not out of need, but out of comfort. He becomes her eyes in the world, describing the scenery she can no longer see, and she, in turn, offers him emotional solace without realizing it. But Windel's internal conflict grows as well. He knows that if Catherine were to find out about his connection to her accident, she would never forgive him. Windel's involvement wasn't direct. He had been part of a gang that ran illegal fights and did business with dangerous people. On the night of Catherine's accident, the gang had been staging a heist that went wrong. A car chase had ensued, and one of their vehicles collided with the car Catherine was in, leaving her blind. Though Windel wasn't the driver, he was still part of the crime, and he feels as though her blindness is a constant reminder of his failure to protect innocent lives. However, in Catherine's presence, Windel dares to hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, he can find redemption. The more time he spends with her, the more he envisions a life outside of his guilt. A life where he could be worthy of love. Windel starts to change, taking small steps to distance himself from his old life. He even begins training at a local gym, hoping to return to kickboxing, not for fame or money, but as a way to regain control of his life. Windel's secret continues to weigh on him, but he buries it deeper, focusing instead on his growing feelings for Catherine. Their bond becomes more than just friendship. Catherine finds herself feeling safe and understood in Windel's company, in a way she hasn't felt since her accident. The two spend more time together, sharing quiet moments, discussing life, love, and their hopes for the future. One day, during one of their walks, Catherine reveals more about her accident. She talks about how it happened so fast, how one moment she was in the car with her family, and the next, everything went dark. Her voice trembles slightly as she recalls the months of rehabilitation and how she had to relearn how to live without her sight. Windel listens, his heart aching, knowing that he was partly to blame for her suffering. "I miss the colors," Catherine admits, a hint of sadness in her voice. "I miss seeing the faces of the people I love, but I've learned to see the world in a new way. I focus on sounds, smells, and feelings. It's different, but it's still beautiful." Windel is stunned by her resilience. Despite everything, she has found a way to see beauty in the world, even in the face of such loss. Her strength makes him feel even more unworthy of her affection, yet he can't deny the pull he feels toward her. He wants to protect her, even if that means protecting her from himself. Their connection deepens as they continue to share their vulnerabilities. Windel tells Catherine about his struggles, though he still leaves out the details of his past. He tells her about his failed kickboxing career, his regrets, and how he feels like he's wasted his potential. Catherine, always encouraging, tells him that it's never too late to start over. "You've already come so far," she says softly. "I don't know what you went through, but I can tell you're a good person. You have the power to change your life, Windel. We all do." Just as Windel begins to believe he can build a future with Catherine, his past comes back to haunt him. One evening, while walking Catherine home, he notices a familiar face lurking in the shadows. Trevor, a former associate from his gang days. Trevor was the mastermind behind the criminal activities that had once ensnared Windel. Ruthless and manipulative, Trevor had always seen Windel as one of his greatest assets, a skilled fighter who could be easily controlled. Windel tenses up, trying to shield Catherine from Trevor's gaze. After dropping her off, he confronts Trevor in a nearby alley. Trevor, grinning wickedly, tells Windel that he's been watching him. He knows about Catherine and hints that he knows more about her accident than Windel would like him to. Trevor pressures Windel to return to the underground world of illegal fights, threatening to expose the truth about his connection to Catherine's blindness if he refuses. Windel is torn. On one hand, he wants to protect Catherine from the pain of learning the truth. On the other hand, he knows that getting involved with Trevor again could endanger not just his life but hers as well. For the first time in years, Windel feels trapped, unable to see a way out without destroying everything he's built with Catherine. Desperate to keep her safe, Windel begins distancing himself from Catherine. He cancels plans and avoids her calls, afraid that if he stays close to her, Trevor will use her as leverage. Catherine, sensing that something is wrong, is heartbroken. She doesn't understand why Windel is pulling away, and the pain of losing the connection they've built feels unbearable. Little does she know, Windel is fighting a battle to protect her, even if it means breaking both of their hearts in the process. The days feel heavier for Catherine as Windel becomes more distant. She can't understand why their once budding relationship seems to be slipping away. She thinks back to their long talks, the warmth of his hand guiding her on walks, and the laughter they shared, only to be left wondering where it all went wrong. Her friends, noticing her growing distress, suggest that perhaps Windel is dealing with personal issues, but Catherine can't shake the feeling that it's more than that. Despite Windel's attempts to withdraw, he can't stay away from her for long. One evening, guilt-ridden and unable to bear the thought of hurting her, Windel shows up unexpectedly at her door. Catherine, surprised and relieved to see him, invites him in. He's quiet at first, but Catherine gently presses him to talk, sensing the turmoil in his heart. "I can't do this, Catherine," Windel finally says, his voice thick with emotion. "You deserve better than me. I'm not the person you think I am." Catherine, confused and hurt, reaches out to him. "But I don't care about your past, Windel. I care about the man you are now. The man who listens to me, who's there for me when no one else is. Why are you pushing me away?" Windel's heart aches at her words, but he still can't bring himself to tell her the full truth. The weight of his involvement in her accident hangs over him like a storm cloud, and he's terrified that if she knew, she would never forgive him. Instead, he tells her half-truths about his troubled past and underground fighting, his regrets, and the people who are still after him. Catherine listens, and though she doesn't fully understand, she takes his hand in hers and tells him, "We all have scars, Windel. Some you can see, and some you can't. But you don't have to carry them alone anymore." Her words touch Windel deeply. He has spent years pushing people away, but with Catherine, it feels different. For the first time in a long time, he feels like maybe, just maybe, he could have a future with someone who truly sees him for who he is. Their bond strengthens that night, and though Windel's guilt still lingers, he allows himself to be vulnerable with her. They grow closer, and love slowly begins to bloom between them. Windel, despite his darkness, becomes a beacon of light in Catherine's world, helping her navigate her everyday life. In return, Catherine gives Windel something he's never had before: hope. As Windel and Catherine's relationship deepens, so does Windel's inner conflict. His heart grows heavier with every day they spend together, the secret of his involvement in her accident threatening to shatter the happiness they've found. He watches Catherine, admiring her strength and resilience, and it breaks him knowing that he's the reason she lost her sight. Windel becomes more withdrawn as the guilt gnaws at him. He knows he should tell her the truth, but every time he tries, the words choke in his throat. How could he confess to being part of the crime that changed her life forever? How could he look into her unseeing eyes and admit that he was one of the men responsible for her suffering? His restlessness grows. At night, he tosses and turns, haunted by nightmares of the accident. He sees the flash of headlights, the screech of tires, and the sound of glass shattering. In his dreams, Catherine is standing in the middle of the road, helpless and unaware, and no matter how hard Windel tries to reach her, he's always too late. During the day, he trains at the gym, pushing his body to its limits, trying to silence the voice in his head that tells him he doesn't deserve Catherine's love. But no amount of physical pain can drown out the emotional turmoil. Even when he's with her, her smile, her laughter, it only reminds him of the truth he's hiding. Catherine, sensing Windel's growing distance, again, grows concerned. She doesn't understand why he's pulling away after they've come so far. She tries to reach him, but every time she gets close, he shuts down. It's as if he's battling something inside that he won't let her see. One evening, after spending another quiet dinner together, Catherine finally confronts him. "Windel, I can feel that something's wrong. You're here, but it feels like you're a million miles away. Please, just talk to me. Whatever it is, we can face it together." Windel struggles with his words, his heart heavy with fear. He wants to tell her everything, to unburden himself of the secret that's been tearing him apart. But the thought of losing her is unbearable. Instead, he only shakes his head, telling her that he's fine, that he's just dealing with some personal issues. But Catherine knows better. She knows there's something deeper going on, but without his willingness to open up, she's left in the dark, both literally and figuratively. Windel's efforts to distance himself from his past are challenged when Trevor, the man who once controlled Windel's underground fighting career, reappears in his life. Trevor's presence brings with it a flood of bad memories and unspoken threats. Trevor knows Windel's secret, his involvement in the night of Catherine's accident, and he has no qualms about using that information to manipulate Windel. Windel's heart races the moment he spots Trevor waiting for him outside the gym one evening. Trevor, with his sharp grin and predatory eyes, looks as though he hasn't aged a day. His casual, confident stance only adds to Windel's growing dread. "Long time no see, Windel," Trevor greets, lighting a cigarette with a practiced flick. "Thought you could just walk away from everything, didn't you?" Windel's body tenses. "What do you want, Trevor?" "Oh, I don't want much. Just a little favor," Trevor says, blowing smoke into the air. "See, I've got a big fight coming up, the kind that makes us both a lot of money, and I need you in the ring." Windel's jaw tightens. "I'm done with that life." Trevor chuckles darkly, shaking his head. "Oh, I know you think you're done, but you and I both know that's not how this works. You owe me, Windel." And if you don't come through, well, let's just say Catherine might not like what she hears about you." Windell's heart drops at the mention of Catherine. Trevor doesn't need to elaborate. Windell knows exactly what he's threatening. If Windell doesn't fight for him, Trevor will tell Catherine the truth about his involvement in the accident. Windell's worst fear is about to come true, and Trevor holds all the cards. Reluctantly, Windell agrees to fight, but it's not for the money. It's to protect Catherine from the truth. He knows that going back into the underground world is dangerous, but what choice does he have? If Catherine ever found out what he did, it would destroy her, and it would destroy any chance they had at a future together. Windell begins to live a double life. By day, he is Catherine's devoted companion, helping her navigate the world with love and care. By night, he trains in secret, preparing for the brutal underground fight that Trevor has forced him into. He tries to keep his two worlds separate, but the weight of his deception grows heavier with each passing day. Catherine, however, is no fool. She senses that something is off. Windell's absences become more frequent, and his mood shifts drastically. At first, she assumes he's just dealing with personal issues as he had said before, but the more distant he becomes, the more she begins to question his honesty. One evening, Catherine overhears a conversation between Windell and Trevor outside her apartment. The two men argue in hushed tones, but Catherine can make out bits and pieces. She hears Windell say something about owing Trevor, about having to fight again, and then she hears her name. Her heart stops. What could Trevor possibly have to do with her? And why does Windell sound so desperate? The conversation ends before she can gather more information, but what she's heard leaves her reeling. Windell had never mentioned Trevor before, and now she's beginning to wonder what else he's been hiding from her. When Windell returns to her apartment, Catherine pretends nothing is wrong, but inside, her mind is racing. She can't help but feel that Windell is keeping something important from her, something that involves her accident, but rather than confront him immediately, she decides to wait, hoping that he'll come clean on his own. As the days pass, Catherine's suspicions grow. She begins to put the pieces together. The strange absences, the tension in Windell's voice when he talks about his past, and now Trevor's sudden appearance. Could Windell have been involved in the accident that took her sight? The thought terrifies her, but she knows she has to find out the truth, no matter how painful it may be. As the days pass, Windell's internal turmoil intensifies. He spends his nights training in secret for his upcoming fight, the weight of Trevor's threats looming over him like a storm. Catherine remains in the dark, her growing suspicions gnawing at her, but Windell continues to hide his pain, forcing himself to be there for her while secretly preparing for the brutal world he thought he had escaped. The night of the fight finally arrives. Windell enters the underground arena, the familiar sounds of the crowd roaring and the smell of sweat and blood filling the air. It's a place that once felt like home, but now it's a prison he can't escape from. Trevor watches from the sidelines, his smug grin sending chills down Windell's spine. The stakes have never been higher. Win, and he can delay Trevor's threats for a while longer. Lose, and everything crumbles. As Windell steps into the ring, he blocks out the noise around him, focusing only on the opponent in front of him. This fight is about more than just survival. It's about protecting Catherine from the truth, from the world he's trapped in. The bell rings, and Windell unleashes all the anger and frustration he's been holding inside. His opponent is strong, but Windell fights like a man possessed, determined to win at all costs. The fight is brutal, each punch and kick landing with sickening force, but Windell doesn't back down. He pushes himself harder, fueled by the image of Catherine's smile, the thought of losing her unbearable. By the time the final bell rings, Windell is victorious, though battered and bruised. The crowd erupts in cheers, but Windell feels nothing. There's no joy in this victory, only a hollow emptiness. Trevor approaches him after the fight, clapping him on the back. "Well done, Windell. See, you've still got it. Now, keep this up, and maybe I won't have to tell Catherine about your little secret." Windell clenches his fists, rage bubbling beneath the surface, but he holds it in. He knows he's trapped in Trevor's game for now, and the only way out is to keep playing along. But with each passing day, the burden of his secret becomes harder to bear. Back at home, Catherine waits anxiously for Windel's return, her heart heavy with uncertainty. She's tried to push away her suspicions, telling herself that Windel would never hurt her, that he's only hiding something to protect her. But the nagging doubt in her mind grows louder with each passing day. When Windel finally returns, his body bruised and battered, Catherine's heart sinks. She doesn't need to see him to know that something is wrong. She gently touches his face, her fingers tracing the cuts and bruises on his skin. "Windel, what happened to you?" she asks, her voice trembling with concern. Windel, exhausted and overwhelmed, struggles to come up with a believable lie. "It's nothing," he mutters, trying to pull away from her touch. "Just got into a fight at the gym. It's no big deal." But Catherine knows better. She can hear the strain in his voice, the pain he's trying to hide. "You're lying to me, Windel," she says softly, her heart breaking as the words leave her lips. "I don't know what's going on, but I can feel that you're keeping something from me. Please, just tell me the truth." Windel's chest tightens, guilt flooding him as he looks at Catherine. He wants to tell her everything, to unburden himself of the secret that's been eating away at him for so long. But the fear of losing her is too great. He can't bring himself to admit the truth. Not yet. "I'm sorry, Catherine," he whispers, his voice thick with emotion. I can't tell you. Not right now." Catherine's heart sinks at his words, and though she wants to press him for answers, she holds back. She knows that whatever Windel is hiding, it's tearing him apart, but she also knows that forcing him to talk won't help. Instead, she takes his hand in hers, offering him the only comfort she can give. "When you're ready," she says softly, "I'll be here." As Windel's underground, fighting continues, Trevor's grip on him tightens. Windel is forced into more fights, each one more dangerous than the last. He knows he's walking a fine line. One misstep, and everything could fall apart. But with each fight, the risk of losing Catherine grows, and Windel is desperate to find a way out. Meanwhile, Catherine can no longer ignore her suspicions. She starts to investigate on her own, piecing together the fragments of conversations she's overheard, the strange absences, and the bruises that Windel can't explain. One evening, while Windel is out, Catherine decides to confront the truth head-on. She contacts a friend who has connections in the underground world, asking them to look into Windel's activities. What she uncovers shocks her to her core. Windel has been fighting in illegal underground matches for weeks, risking his life in brutal, unregulated brawls. But it's not just the fighting that terrifies her. It's the fact that Trevor, the man who seems to control Windel, is somehow connected to her accident. Catherine's mind races as she pieces everything together. Could Windel have been involved in the accident that took her sight? The thought makes her sick to her stomach, but deep down, she knows she has to confront him with what she's learned. The truth may hurt, but living in the dark, both literally and figuratively, is no longer an option. The next evening, when Windel returns home, Catherine is waiting for him. Her face is pale, her hands trembling slightly as she stands in the middle of the room. Windel, sensing something is wrong, approaches her cautiously. "Catherine, what's wrong?" he asks, his voice filled with concern. Catherine takes a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. "I know, Windel. I know about the underground fights. I know about Trevor." Windel freezes, his blood turning to ice. "Catherine, I can explain." But Catherine doesn't let him finish. "And I know that Trevor is connected to my accident. What I don't know, Windel, is if you were involved too." Her voice cracks as she speaks, the words cutting through the air like a blade. Windel's heart shatters at the accusation. He can see the pain in her face, the fear and doubt that have been building inside her for weeks. He knows this moment was inevitable, but it doesn't make it any easier. "I'm so sorry, Catherine," he whispers, his voice barely audible. "I never wanted you to find out like this." Catherine's breath catches in her throat, her worst fears confirmed. You were there?" she asks, her voice trembling. "You were part of the accident that took my sight?" Tears fill Windell's eyes as he nods, unable to speak. The weight of his guilt crashes down on him like a tidal wave, and all he can do is fall to his knees before her, begging for forgiveness. "I didn't know," he chokes out. "I didn't know it was you until later. I swear, if I had known." Catherine steps back, her heart breaking into a million pieces. She had trusted Windell with everything, had let him into her life, into her heart, and now it felt like that trust had been shattered beyond repair. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Windell," she says, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again." Windell's heart crumbles at her words, but he knows he deserves them. He had been a coward, hiding the truth from her for so long, and now he's paying the price. All he can do is watch as Catherine turns away from him, her steps hesitant as she moves toward the door. "Catherine, please," Windell pleads, his voice raw with desperation. "I love you. I never meant to hurt you." Catherine pauses, her hand on the doorframe. She doesn't respond, but the silence is deafening. Without another word, she walks out of the apartment, leaving Windell alone in the darkness. After Catherine walks out of Windell's life, everything changes. The apartment they once shared feels empty and cold without her presence. Windell spends his days haunted by memories, and every corner of the place reminds him of the love they once had. He can barely sleep or eat, the guilt and heartbreak consuming him like a relentless storm. Windell tries to call her, to send her messages, but Catherine doesn't respond. She needs time, space to process everything. She had given her heart to Windell, trusted him with her vulnerability, and now that trust has been shattered in the worst possible way. The man she had loved, the man she had envisioned a future with, was connected to the very accident that had taken her sight. The betrayal is too raw, too painful to confront. As the days stretch into weeks, Windell becomes a shell of his former self. The underground fights continue, more brutal and more frequent as Trevor tightens his grip on him. Windell is physically present in the ring, but emotionally, he's detached. The fights are his punishment now, a way to numb the pain, to feel something other than the crushing weight of losing Catherine. Trevor, sensing Windell's desperation, pushes him harder than ever. "You're a mess, Windell," Trevor sneers after one particularly brutal match. "But that's what makes you a great fighter. Pain fuels you. It's what makes you unstoppable." But Windell doesn't care about being a great fighter anymore. The fame, the money, none of it matters without Catherine. He's fighting because he has no other choice, because Trevor has him cornered and he can't escape. But with every punch he throws, every hit he takes, a piece of his soul dies a little more. Meanwhile, Catherine is trying to rebuild her life. After leaving Windell, she moves in with her friend Emma, who has been her rock during this difficult time. Emma helps Catherine navigate the emotional turmoil she's facing, encouraging her to focus on herself and take things one day at a time. But it's not easy. Catherine's heart is still aching, and no matter how hard she tries to move on, thoughts of Windell linger in her mind. She knows. She made the right decision by walking away. She needed to protect herself from more pain. Yet, deep down, she still loves him, despite everything. Catherine begins therapy, seeking guidance on how to process the trauma of her accident and her relationship with Windell. Her therapist helps her unpack the layers of guilt, anger, and sorrow that have been weighing her down. Through the sessions, Catherine realizes that part of her struggle stems from the fact that she hasn't fully dealt with the accident that took her sight. Confronting Windell's role in it has reopened old wounds, but it's also forcing her to finally heal. She also begins to rediscover her independence, spending more time outside, exploring the world in new ways despite her blindness. Catherine takes up pottery, finding solace in the tactile, creative process. She throws herself into her new hobby, determined to create something beautiful out of the pain she's endured. But even as she heals, Catherine knows that she can't ignore the past forever. There's still one question that haunts her. Was Windell truly guilty, or was he just another victim of Trevor's manipulation? For Windell, life becomes an endless cycle of fights and self-destruction. Every match leaves him more battered and broken, and Trevor shows no signs of easing up. Windel is becoming a shadow of his former self, and those close to him can see that he's spiraling. Even his opponents, who once feared him, notice the change. Windel fights like a man with nothing left to lose, his movements fueled by desperation rather than skill. One night, after a particularly brutal fight, Windel finds himself in the locker room, staring at his bloodied reflection in the mirror. His face is unrecognizable, swollen, bruised, and cut in too many places to count. But it's not the physical pain that breaks him. It's the emptiness inside, the realization that he's lost the only person who ever made him feel alive. That night, something in Windel snaps. He can't keep living like this, trapped in Trevor's web of manipulation and lies. He's had enough of the underground world, enough of the guilt and shame that has consumed him. Windel makes a decision. He's going to fight one last match, and then he's done. He'll find a way to escape Trevor's control, even if it kills him. But before he can leave this world behind, Windel knows there's one thing he has to do. He has to confront Catherine, to beg for her forgiveness one last time. He's not sure if she'll ever take him back, but he needs her to know the truth, to hear it from his own lips, even if it means facing the consequences. As Windel prepares for what he hopes will be his final fight, Catherine receives an unexpected visitor, Trevor. He shows up at her doorstep unannounced, his presence sending a chill down her spine. Trevor has always been an intimidating figure, but now, knowing everything he's done, Catherine can barely stand to look at him. "Windel's falling apart," Trevor says casually, as if he's discussing the weather. "He's not the fighter he used to be. And that's your fault, Catherine." Catherine clenches her fists, her anger rising. "What do you want, Trevor?" "I want you to stay out of his life," Trevor says, his voice low and dangerous. "He's weak because of you. If you care about him, you'll let him go. Otherwise, you're only going to drag him down further." Catherine feels a surge of defiance. "No, Trevor. You're the one who's been dragging him down. You've been controlling him, manipulating him into fighting for you." Trevor's eyes narrow, a sinister smile creeping across his face. "You think you know him, Catherine? You don't. You have no idea what he's capable of. Windel isn't the man you think he is. He's a fighter, and fighters belong in the ring. You think you can save him? You're delusional." Trevor's words echo in Catherine's mind long after he leaves. She doesn't want to believe him, but the doubt lingers. Can Windel ever truly escape the world of underground fighting? And if he does, can they ever go back to the way things were? Later that night, Catherine finds herself standing outside the gym where Windel trains. She hesitates, her heart pounding in her chest. Part of her is terrified to face him, to hear whatever truth he has to share. But she knows that if she doesn't confront him now, she'll regret it forever. Inside, Windel is alone, hitting the punching bag with all the strength he has left. His body is exhausted, his mind a mess of emotions. When he hears the door open, he turns, his heart skipping a beat as he sees Catherine standing there. For a moment, neither of them speaks. The tension between them is palpable, the air thick with unspoken words. Finally, Catherine breaks the silence. "Windel," she says softly, her voice trembling, "I need to know the truth. Everything." Windel takes a deep breath, his eyes filled with sorrow. "I never wanted to hurt you, Catherine. I was there the night of the accident, but I didn't know it was you until after. Trevor, he's been blackmailing me ever since. I'm trapped in his world, and I don't know how to get out." Catherine listens, her heart aching with every word. She can hear the pain in Windel's voice, the desperation in his confession. She knows that he's telling the truth, but it doesn't make the betrayal any easier to bear. "I'm sorry," Windel whispers, his voice breaking. "I love you, Catherine. I always have. But I understand if you can't forgive me." Catherine takes a step closer, her emotions swirling inside her. She can feel the weight of everything they've been through, the pain, the lies, the love that still lingers between them. She doesn't know if she can fully forgive Windel, but she knows that walking away won't give her the closure she needs. "I don't know what the future holds," Catherine says softly, "but I want to try. I want to believe that we can move past this, that we can find a way to heal." Windel's heart swells with hope, but he knows that their path won't be easy. He still has to face Trevor, to fight one last time, and find a way to break free from the underground world. But for the first time in weeks, he feels a glimmer of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, he and Catherine can have a future together. Windel stands in front of the mirror, staring at his reflection, bruised, battered, and worn down from months of fighting. His face is a canvas of scars, each one a reminder of the pain he's endured. But tonight is different. Tonight, he's preparing for his final match, his last fight in the underground ring, the one that will either set him free or destroy him entirely. Catherine's words echo in his mind, her plea for them to try and move forward. She wants a future with him, and for the first time in what feels like forever, Windel dares to hope. But first, he has to break free from Trevor's grasp. The fight tonight will decide everything. As Windel makes his way to the ring, the atmosphere is tense. The crowd is rowdy, hungry for blood. They've come to see him, the undefeated champion, take down his opponent one last time. But Windel isn't fighting for them. He's fighting for his freedom, for Catherine, for the chance at a life where he's no longer defined by violence. His opponent, a hulking brute named Vargas, stands across the ring. Vargas is known for his brutality, a ruthless fighter with no mercy. Windel knows this will be his toughest fight yet, but he's ready. He has no choice but to win. The bell rings, and the fight begins. Windel moves with a precision he hasn't felt in months, his focus sharper than ever. He dodges Vargas's powerful strikes, landing his own punches with calculated accuracy. The crowd roars, but Windel tunes them out, his mind focused solely on the task at hand. As the fight wears on, Windel feels the weight of exhaustion settling in. His body is pushed to its limits, every muscle screaming in protest. But he can't give up. Not now. Not when he's so close to the end. In a final burst of strength, Windel delivers a devastating punch to Vargas's jaw, knocking him to the ground. The crowd erupts into cheers, but Windel doesn't hear them. All he hears is the sound of his own labored breathing as the referee counts Vargas out. It's over. Windel has won. But there's no relief, no sense of victory. Windel knows that the real battle is just beginning. After the fight, Windel makes his way to the locker room, his body aching with every step. He knows Trevor is waiting for him, and the confrontation that's been building for months is finally about to come to a head. Trevor is pacing when Windel enters, a scowl etched across his face. "You did it," Trevor sneers, his voice dripping with sarcasm. The Golden Boy won his final match. But don't think for a second that you're walking away from this. Windel stands tall, despite the exhaustion weighing him down. "I'm done, Trevor. I'm out. I've given you everything, and now it's over." Trevor's eyes narrow, his anger simmering just beneath the surface. "You think you can just walk away? After everything I've done for you? After everything I know?" Windel clenches his fists, trying to keep his cool. "You've been blackmailing me for months. You used me, manipulated me, and ruined my life. I'm done being your puppet." Trevor steps closer, his voice low and menacing. "You don't get to decide when it's over, Windel. I own you. And if you think you can leave, you're sorely mistaken." Windel's heart pounds in his chest. He knows Trevor won't let him go easily, but he also knows that he can't keep living like this. "I'm not afraid of you anymore, Trevor," Windel says, his voice steady. "You have no power over me. And if you try to come after me or Catherine, I'll make sure you regret it." Trevor's sneer falters for a moment, but his arrogance quickly returns. "You're a fool, Windel. You think you can protect her? You can't even protect yourself." Windel turns to leave, his resolve stronger than ever. "We'll see about that." As he walks away, Windel knows that this is far from over. Trevor won't let him go without a fight, and the danger that looms over him and Catherine is more real than ever. But for the first time in months, Windel feels a sense of hope. He's taken the first step toward reclaiming his life, and he won't let Trevor drag him back into the darkness. Catherine is waiting for Windel when he returns to the apartment. Her heart is pounding with a mix of anxiety and hope, unsure of what to expect. She's heard about the fight, about Windel's victory, but she knows that the real battle is still ahead. When Windel walks through the door, his face bruised and swollen from the match, Catherine's heart aches for him. She can see the toll that the underground world has taken on him, the scars, both physical and emotional, that he carries. Windel doesn't say anything at first, his exhaustion evident in every step. He collapses onto the couch, his head in his hands, and Catherine sits beside him, unsure of what to say. "I won," Windel finally mutters, his voice heavy with fatigue. But it doesn't feel like a victory. Catherine places a gentle hand on his shoulder, her voice soft. "You did what you had to do. You're free now, Windel. You don't have to fight anymore." Windel looks up at her, his eyes filled with a mix of relief and sorrow. "I'm free from the fights, but Trevor won't let me go that easily. He's still out there, and he won't stop until he gets what he wants." Catherine's heart sinks at the mention of Trevor. She knows how dangerous he is, how far he's willing to go to keep control over Windel. But she also knows that Windel is strong, that he's not the same man who was trapped in Trevor's web of manipulation. "We'll figure it out," Catherine says, her voice filled with determination. "We'll find a way to deal with Trevor together." Windel looks at her, his heart swelling with gratitude. Catherine has been through so much because of him, and yet she's still here, willing to fight alongside him. "I don't deserve you," Windel whispers, his voice thick with emotion. Catherine smiles softly, her hand gently brushing against his cheek. "We've both made mistakes, Windel, but we're stronger together. We can get through this." In that moment, Windel realizes just how much he loves Catherine. She's his anchor, the one person who has stood by him through everything. And now, with her by his side, he feels like he can finally face the future, whatever it may hold. In the days that follow, Windel and Catherine work together to distance themselves from Trevor and the underground world that has haunted their lives. Windel cuts all ties with Trevor's associates, refusing to participate in any more fights. He knows that Trevor will try to retaliate, but he's prepared for whatever comes next. Catherine, too, finds herself taking steps toward a brighter future. She continues her therapy, working through the trauma of her accident and the complicated emotions surrounding her relationship with Windel. She also begins to explore new opportunities for work, determined to live a life that isn't defined by her blindness. But just as things seem to be falling into place, Trevor makes one final move. One evening, as Windel and Catherine return to their apartment, they find the door ajar. Inside, the place has been ransacked, furniture overturned, belongings strewn across the floor. Windel's heart races as he surveys the damage, his mind immediately going to Trevor. Suddenly, a voice echoes from the shadows. "I told you it wasn't over." Trevor steps into the light, a sinister smile on his face. He holds a gun in his hand, the cold metal gleaming in the dim light. Windel moves in front of Catherine, his protective instincts kicking in. "This is between you and me, Trevor," Windel says, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "Leave her out of it." Trevor chuckles darkly. "Oh, Windel, you never did learn, did you? You think you can just walk away from me? From all of this?" Windel's jaw clenches, his fists at his sides. "I'm done with you, Trevor. You don't control me anymore." Trevor raises the gun, his finger hovering over the trigger. "We'll see about that." But before Trevor can make his move, Catherine steps forward, her voice calm and steady. "You don't have to do this, Trevor. This doesn't have to end in violence." Trevor hesitates for a moment, his eyes flickering with uncertainty. It's in that brief moment of distraction that Windel makes his move, tackling Trevor to the ground. The gun goes off, the sound echoing through the apartment, but the bullet misses its mark. Windel wrestles the gun from Trevor's grip, pinning him down with all the strength he has left. "It's over, Trevor," Windel says, his voice filled with finality. "You've lost." Trevor glares up at Windel, his face contorted with rage, but he knows he's been defeated. With the gun now in Windel's hands, Trevor has no choice but to surrender. As the police arrive to take Trevor into custody, Windel and Catherine stand together, their hands intertwined. They've survived the storm, and now, for the first time in a long time, they can finally start to rebuild their lives. The days following Trevor's arrest are a whirlwind of emotions for Windel and Catherine. For so long, they had been trapped in a cycle of fear, secrets, and danger. Now, as the dust settles and the police close the case on Trevor's criminal network, they finally have the chance to breathe again. But the scars left behind, both visible and invisible, are not so easily erased. Windel begins the process of healing, not just physically from his final match, but emotionally from the years of torment he endured. He starts seeing a therapist at Catherine's encouragement, confronting the guilt and shame that have weighed him down. The guilt of his past choices, the violent path he chose, and the pain he caused Catherine eats away at him. But he knows that if he's ever going to be the man she deserves, he needs to face these demons head-on. Catherine, too, continues to navigate her own healing journey. Though she has made incredible strides in accepting her blindness, she still has moments of doubt. The world is often unkind to those who are different, and even now, she worries about how her disability will shape their future together. But with Windel by her side, she feels stronger, more capable of facing whatever challenges lie ahead. As the weeks pass, they rebuild their lives together, creating a new normal. Windel leaves the underground fighting world behind completely, finding honest work in a local gym where he begins training others in self-defense. It's a fresh start, and while it's not glamorous, it's honest, and that's enough for him. He feels a sense of purpose again, knowing that he's helping others in a way that doesn't rely on violence. For Catherine, life has taken on a new rhythm. She's continuing her work with guide dogs, finding solace in the routine and comfort they provide. But she's also pursuing a new dream, one she hadn't dared to believe was possible before. With Windel's support, Catherine enrolls in a creative writing course, tapping into her passion for storytelling. Though she can't see the world with her eyes, she's determined to share the way she sees it through words. Though things are finally looking up, there's still an underlying tension in their lives. Trevor may be gone, but the shadow of his influence lingers. Windel can't shake the feeling that Trevor had more connections than anyone realized, that perhaps some of his associates still hold grudges against him. One evening, as they sit together in their small apartment, Catherine senses Windel's unease. She places a hand on his arm, her voice soft but firm. "Windel, you've been quiet tonight. What's on your mind?" Windel hesitates for a moment before speaking. "I keep thinking about Trevor, about how easily he was able to control my life for so long. What if there are others out there like him? People who want to drag us back into that world?" Catherine's grip tightens slightly. She understands his fears. They've both lived under the weight of them for so long. But she also knows that living in fear isn't living at all. "Trevor's gone, Windel. He can't hurt us anymore. And if there are others out there, we'll face them together, just like we've faced everything else." Windel looks at her, his heart swelling with gratitude. "You always know what to say," he murmurs, leaning in to kiss her gently. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Catherine smiles against his lips, her voice barely a whisper. "You'll never have to find out." Just as they begin to settle into this new phase of their lives, an unexpected figure from Windel's past makes a sudden reappearance. Marcus, an old friend and fellow fighter from Windel's underground days. Marcus had disappeared years ago after a particularly brutal fight, and Windel hadn't heard from him since. One afternoon, while Windel is at the gym, Marcus walks through the door, looking worn and battle-scarred but unmistakably familiar. "Windel," Marcus calls, a crooked smile playing on his lips. "Long time, no see." Windel's heart skips a beat at the sight of his old friend. Memories flood his mind, memories of the camaraderie they once shared, but also of the violence and chaos that came with it. He had left that world behind, and seeing Marcus now feels like a ghost from the past has come to haunt him. "Marcus," Windel responds, his voice cautious. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again." Marcus shrugs, walking closer. I've been around. Heard you got out of the game. That true? Windel nods, his expression serious. Yeah, I'm done with that life. I'm not going back. Marcus raises an eyebrow, glancing around the gym. Seems like you've done all right for yourself, but you can't forget where we came from, man. The underground world doesn't let you go that easy. Windel's stomach tightens. He knows Marcus is right. No one ever truly walks away unscathed, but he's determined to prove that it's possible, that he and Catherine can build a life that's free from the violence of the past. I'm not interested, Marcus, Windel says firmly. I've got a good thing going here, and I'm not about to mess it up. Marcus smirks, but there's something dark in his eyes. You think it's that simple? You think you can just walk away and everything will be fine? There's a storm coming, Windel, and when it hits, you'd better be ready. With that ominous warning, Marcus turns and leaves the gym, leaving Windel to wonder if his past is about to catch up with him once again. Windel tries to shake off Marcus's words, but the feeling of unease lingers. He doesn't tell Catherine about the encounter, not wanting to worry her. But as the days pass, Windel can't help but feel like he's being watched. Shadows seem to follow him wherever he goes, and the sense of dread grows stronger with each passing day. One night, as Windel and Catherine are returning home from a late dinner, they notice a car parked across the street from their apartment. It's been there before, and each time Windel sees it, a chill runs down his spine. Catherine senses his tension. Windel, what is it? You've been on edge for days. Windel debates whether or not to tell her the truth, but he knows he can't keep secrets from her, not after everything they've been through. I think someone's watching us, he admits, his voice low. I ran into an old friend. He warned me that trouble was coming, and I think he was right. Catherine's heart skips a beat. Do you think it's Trevor's associates? Are we in danger? Windel takes a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I don't know, but I'm not going to let anything happen to you, Catherine. I'll protect you, no matter what. As they head inside, Windel knows that the peaceful life they've worked so hard to build is once again under threat. But this time, he's not going to run. This time, he'll face the storm head-on, and he'll do it with Catherine by his side. The tension escalates quickly after Windel's ominous realization. A few days later, just as he's closing up the gym for the night, the same car that's been tailing them pulls into the parking lot. Windel's instincts kick in. Something bad is about to go down. A group of 3 men step out of the vehicle, their movements calculated, their expressions cold. They don't say anything at first, simply standing in the shadows as Windel watches them. He's no stranger to this kind of confrontation. This is how things went down in his underground fighting days. But he's out of that world now, and he won't let them drag him back in. One of the men, the apparent leader, finally steps forward, his voice low and threatening. Windel, right? Marcus sends his regards. Windel's muscles tense. He knew Marcus's warning wasn't just idle talk, but he hadn't expected things to escalate this quickly. I told Marcus I'm not interested, Windel responds, his voice steady. I'm out. The man chuckles darkly. That's the thing. You don't get to be out. Not without consequences. The other 2 men inch closer, but Windel stands his ground. His hands curl into fists, ready to defend himself if it comes to that. He's no longer a fighter, but he hasn't forgotten how to protect himself. You can go back and tell Marcus I'm done with his games, Windel says firmly. If you've got a problem, we can settle it here and now. The leader smirks. Not tonight, Windel, but this isn't over. You'll see. With that, the men turn and leave, disappearing into the night as quickly as they had appeared. Windel watches them go, his heart pounding in his chest. He knows this is only the beginning. Windel rushes home that night, his mind racing. He can't let Catherine know about the confrontation. It would only worry her, and she's been through enough. But as much as he tries to protect her, he knows he can't face this alone. The moment he walks through the door, Catherine senses something is off. Windel, what's wrong? She asks, her voice filled with concern. Windel hesitates, but he can't lie to her. Not anymore. I had a run-in with some guys from my past tonight, he admits, his voice heavy. They came to the gym looking for trouble. Catherine's face pales, and she instinctively reaches for his hand. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? No, Windel reassures her, squeezing her hand. But they made it clear that this isn't over. I think Marcus is trying to drag me back into the underground world, and I don't know how far he's willing to go. Catherine's grip tightens, her expression resolute. We'll face this together, Windel. Whatever comes, we'll deal with it. But you can't do this alone. Windel nods, grateful for her strength. I know, but I'm not going to let anything happen to you, Catherine. You're my priority. Catherine smiles softly, though her worry is clear. And you're mine. They hold each other close that night, knowing that the road ahead is uncertain. But whatever happens, they're in this together. As the days pass, Windel becomes more vigilant, watching every corner, every shadow, anticipating the next move from Marcus's men. He knows it's only a matter of time before they come for him again, and this time, he has a plan. Windel contacts an old friend from his fighting days, someone he can still trust. Jackson, a former fighter turned private investigator, agrees to meet with Windel. They sit together at a quiet cafe, discussing Windel's situation. Marcus always had a grudge against you, Jackson says, sipping his coffee. You were one of the few guys who got out and made something of yourself. He couldn't stand that. I don't want to go back to that life, Windel replies. I've got Catherine now, and I'm trying to build something real. But if Marcus doesn't back off, I don't know how long I can keep him away. Jackson leans back in his chair, thinking, you could try to reason with him, but I doubt that'll work. He's too far gone. The only way to end this is to expose him. To the police, to his enemies in the underground world. Make him too hot to touch. Windel frowns. That's dangerous. If I go that route, he'll come for me and Catherine with everything he's got. True, Jackson agrees. But it's the only way to make sure he's out of your life for good. Windel considers the plan. It's risky, but it might be their only chance. I'll do it, he says finally, but I need your help. Jackson nods. You've got it. With Jackson's help, Windel begins gathering information on Marcus's criminal activities. They find evidence of illegal gambling, drug trafficking, and more, all tied to Marcus's name. It's enough to put him away for a long time, but getting the information to the authorities without tipping off Marcus is the tricky part. Meanwhile, Marcus's men continue to watch Windel and Catherine, waiting for the right moment to strike. Windel knows it's only a matter of time before Marcus makes his move. That moment comes one night when Catherine is home alone. Windel had stepped out to meet Jackson, and as soon as he leaves, the men strike. They break into the apartment, finding Catherine sitting on the couch, unaware of the danger creeping toward her. But as soon as they step inside, Catherine's sharp instincts kick in. She may be blind, but she's not helpless. She grabs the pepper spray Windel had given her and sprays it in the direction of the noise, hitting one of the men square in the face. He howls in pain, but the other two grab her before she can run. We don't want to hurt you, lady, one of them says, his voice rough. But Windel needs to learn his lesson. Just as they're about to drag her out, Windel bursts through the door, his face a mask of fury. He had sensed something was wrong the moment he left, and he'd rushed back as fast as he could. Windel doesn't hesitate. He charges at the men, fists flying. His years of fighting experience come flooding back, and he takes them down one by one, protecting Catherine with every blow. Finally, the men are subdued, lying on the floor, groaning in pain. Windel pulls Catherine into his arms, his heart pounding. Are you okay? He asks, his voice hoarse. Catherine nods, clinging to him. I'm fine, Windel, but this has to stop. We can't live like this. Windel holds her close, knowing she's right. It's time to end this once and for all. The next day, Windel and Jackson finalize their plan. With all the evidence they've gathered, they are ready to expose Marcus. But they know that once they make their move, there's no turning back. Marcus will come for them with everything he has. Windel and Catherine spend a quiet evening together, knowing it might be their last moment of peace before the storm hits. Windel sits beside Catherine, holding her close as they listen to the sound of the city outside their window. "I'm scared, Windel," Catherine admits softly. "Not for myself, but for you. You've already been through so much." Windel brushes a strand of hair away from her face, his heart aching for the pain they've both endured. "I'm scared too," he confesses. "But this is the only way. We can't keep running. If we're going to have a future together, I need to put an end to this." Catherine squeezes his hand, her voice filled with quiet strength. "I trust you, Windel. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." The next day, Windel and Jackson send the evidence to both the police and Marcus's biggest rivals in the underground world. The message is clear. Marcus is finished. His empire is crumbling, and there's nowhere left for him to hide. Windel knows that Marcus won't go down without a fight, so he prepares himself for the inevitable showdown. That evening, Windel and Catherine are at home, waiting. Windel can feel the tension in the air, the calm before the storm. He knows Marcus won't go quietly, and he's prepared for the worst. Just as expected, Marcus and his men arrive, breaking down the door with brute force. Windel stands between them and Catherine, ready to defend her with everything he has. "Windel," Marcus snarls, his face twisted with rage. "You think you can destroy me and get away with it? I made you, and now I'm going to tear you apart." Windel squares his shoulders, his voice calm but firm. "I'm not afraid of you anymore, Marcus. This ends tonight." Marcus lunges at Windel, fists flying, but Windel is ready. The two men engage in a brutal fight, their past animosity coming to a head in a clash of fists and fury. Windel fights not just for himself but for Catherine, for the life they've built, and for the future they deserve. The fight is intense, but Windel's strength and determination give him the upper hand. With a final, devastating punch, he knocks Marcus to the ground, leaving him dazed and defeated. Marcus's men hesitate, realizing that their leader has been beaten. The sound of police sirens echoes in the distance, and they know the fight is over. The police arrive just in time, arresting Marcus and his remaining crew. Windel stands over Marcus, his chest heaving with exertion, but he feels a sense of relief wash over him. It's finally over. As Marcus is dragged away in handcuffs, he glares at Windel. "This isn't over, Windel," he growls. "I'll be back." But Windel just shakes his head. "No, Marcus, it's over." In the days that follow, Windel and Catherine finally find the peace they've been searching for. Marcus is in prison, and his criminal empire has been dismantled. Windel knows there will always be challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long time, he feels free. Windel continues his work at the gym, finding joy in helping others through training and self-defense. He's built a new life, one that doesn't rely on violence, and he's proud of the man he's become. Catherine's creative writing flourishes. She completes her first short story, a story about love, loss, and the power of resilience, and submits it to a local magazine. When it gets published, Windel beams with pride, knowing how far she's come. One sunny afternoon, Windel and Catherine sit together on a park bench, their hands intertwined. The world around them is alive with the sound of birds and laughter, a stark contrast to the darkness they've faced. "I never thought we'd get here," Catherine says softly, resting her head on Windel's shoulder. "After everything we've been through." "We deserve this," Windel replies, kissing the top of her head. "We've fought hard for it, and now we get to enjoy it." Catherine smiles, a sense of peace settling over her. "What do you think comes next?" Windel pauses, gazing out at the horizon. "Whatever we want. The future is ours, Catherine. No more looking back." They sit together in silence for a while, savoring the moment. The shadows of their past are finally behind them, and all that lies ahead is hope, love, and endless possibilities. Months later, Windel and Catherine stand on the rooftop of their apartment building, watching the sunset. The sky is painted with shades of pink and orange, a beautiful reminder of the life they've built together. Windel pulls a small box from his pocket, his heart racing. "Catherine," he begins, turning to face her. "I've wanted to ask you this for a while now, but after everything we've been through, I know this is the right moment." Catherine's eyes widen in surprise, and though she can't see the ring, she feels the weight of the moment in the air. "Windel, what are you?" Windel kneels down on one knee, holding up the ring. "Catherine, you've been my strength, my light in the darkest of times. I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me?" Tears fill Catherine's eyes as she smiles, her heart overflowing with love. "Yes," she whispers, her voice trembling. "Yes, Windel, I'll marry you." Windel slips the ring onto her finger, standing to pull her into his arms. They kiss, the world around them fading away as they make their promise to one another. Together, they face the darkness and come out stronger on the other side. And now, with their love as their foundation, they are ready to build a future filled with hope, joy, and the endless possibilities that lie ahead. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the story. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more delightful stories.